So let's keep things going. We're gonna talk. We're right back here on Locked On Utah Hockey Club. We're gonna get back to rivalry talk. We had part one of why five teams should be the number one rival for the Utah Hockey Club. We're gonna take those same five teams that we discussed on part one on Friday and now apply the devil's advocate. Why these same five teams should not be Utah's number one rival heading into the 2024-25 NHL season. All of that on today's episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your number one daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm your host, Robyn Leonio, alongside Tom Callahan. We want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every single day. We are free and available everywhere you get your shows. Hope you guys enjoyed our part one episode earlier in the weekend on Friday, talking about rivalries, talking about five teams who we think should be potentially Utah's number one rival. We named those five teams. If you want to take a look back, again, we're going to mention them again on today's episode. But if you want to hear our argument for those five teams and you missed the episode, be sure to take a listen to that. You can hit pause on this episode. We'll still be here. But now, Tom, what we're going to do is we are going to play devil's advocate. We are going to reverse and flip the script and say why these five teams should not be on their Utah's number one rival. And it's going to be interesting because I think some of them easier to make a devil's advocate. Other ones, it's like we'll say it might be harder to make arguments for, but it'll be fun to see.
Well, I agree. I mean, there's reasons. Even if you did listen all the way to the end of the last episode, we threw a couple of asterisks out there, a couple
honorable
of
mentions,
honorable mentions, a couple of maybe they creep into the conversations, but for the sake of drawing a line and not going through the entire NHL, we're saying, hey, look, we understand that these teams are what Robyn and I think could be our rivals, but there are reasons that a Utah fan could come up to us in the street and say, I don't agree with you, and here's why. So to head that off, because we're antisocial, we're going to go ahead and try to present our own reasons first. So Robyn, you pick which team you want to start with.
I guess we can start let's start in reverse order from reverse order from what we did before on the other episode. So let's start with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Okay, and I'm probably going to repeat this reason for a couple of teams as far as why I don't think they will make much of a rival. And if you remember back to my story in part one of this podcast, it can't be one-sided. I don't think Chicago's at a point in its development right now where, quite frankly, they're going to win a ton of games from Utah. Now, maybe I'm pouring gasoline on the fire in Chicago. Great. Post it in the bulletin board. Go for it. Yeah. Utah Hockey Club should win the majority of the games against the Blackhawks this year. And if not, come close to taking the season series entirely, maybe even sweeping it. The Hawks, they're good, and they have the best young player in the game right now. But there are holes. There are big holes in Chicago. And it's going to feel good to beat them every time, but are they going to be your number one rival? I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be enough pushback.
No, and I will say there's that to me, the only reason that was keeping him on the list at first was that star power, the rise of that. And I think outside of that, you can't, it's hard because you don't know the ceiling of Connor Bedard. I mean, of course, everyone knows the ceiling of Connor Bedard, but you don't know exactly when he's going to reach that ceiling. Maybe it's not going to be until much way later. And like you said, the matchup just doesn't make sense at this point. Utah should, for all intents and purposes, be the better team. They should be beating them most of the time. I mean, even take a look at last year, Connor Bedard's rookie year, and Arizona still beat them handily on a couple of games. I think one game, if not mistaken, was like a 6-0 or 7-0 victory. It was a complete rout of a game. And And you're right, it should not be one-sided. You should be able to have a balance of a rivalry, back and forth, and going in. And one of the things that you mentioned, Tom, on our last episode, and I'll kind of tie it in, and it will probably apply to a couple other teams too, is the aspect a lot of rivalries are built in the playoffs. And again, Utah probably won't make the playoffs in the next couple of years, but I just don't see Chicago really making the playoffs anytime soon. So I just can't see that even. I can't really entertain it all that much because of that.
Yeah, again, I mean, the obnoxious fan base is there. The city you love to hate is there. However, here's the other thing, Robin. We talk about that. I don't know how much that registers this far west. I don't know that I mean, yeah, Chicago is, middle America, kind of resonates with both coasts, but on the West Coast, you might love or hate LA. On the East Coast, you might love or hate New York or Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in Utah, I don't know that you're too concerned about Chicago. Again, as a hockey fan, yes, I want to beat them. I want to hear their fan base. I want to hear everybody's fan base complain.
And unless you are like already previously attuned hockey fan and kind of already know the reasons why people hate Chicago.
Right. If you're just coming to the sport now, if you're a brand new fan, all you know is that Chicago is down at the bottom of the West.
Yeah. That's all you know. So, like, I think that's even another aspect too. So people like the newer fans won't know. I mean, unless they read up about it, which I'm sure a lot of you will, because a lot of you guys love the sport and kind of want to get to know the sport as much as you can. But there's a huge chunk, the casual fan, they won't really care. We're not going to look into that.
Right.
What we're gonna do, Tom,
is
so they're out. We gave those reasons. We're gonna go through the next four. We're gonna do those. We're gonna take a quick break so we can hear from our sponsors on today's show.
And today's episode brought to you in part by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agreed Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
So let's keep going on this part 2 episodes talking rivalry. Robyn Leonio, Tom Callahan, Locked On Utah Hockey Club, talking who could potentially be the number one rival for Utah. Now we're giving the devil's advocate why they shouldn't be. Why these 5 teams that we mentioned on part 1 shouldn't be the number one rivals. We're going in reverse order from that part 1. So we talked about Chicago already. Now let's go talk about Seattle, Tom.
Well, Seattle, I think, is prime for a down year. New coach. The identity is not going to be the same. They have to figure out who they are all over again. Yeah. Seattle was curious from the get-go with me with expansion. I thought they took kind of I'm going to use a big word, circumlocuitous route to build their NHL team. I just was, and a lot of people along with me were surprised by the players they picked, the identity they tried to forge from those players, which didn't always seem to make sense. I think Dave Hackstall was a way outside of the box hire. He's gone now too. I'm not really sure what the direction of that hockey club is. They spent big money on Brandon Montour, which kind of blows my mind because they're not ready to win anything.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fan-based move, in my opinion. That was, hey, we need some positive press. We need, some pub to give our fans something to look forward to. There's not much good on the ice. Now, off the ice, the organization's phenomenal. I think Seattle does an amazing job as an organization. But on the ice,
the great game presentation, and they're bringing in fans like crazy.
Yeah.
But I think only so much of that, what can the organization's doing to really rally in those fans, only goes so far, right? So when we talked about territory, Tom, and where the territory is going to be, but if your reach doesn't, let's say your reach doesn't go as far because, like, again, maybe what you're doing is maybe focused on locally. Maybe it's just like easier to capture those fans, and it's like, yeah, well, I'm not really going to be worried too much about Seattle because they're focused up there in the Pacific Northwest, and we're out here on the foot of the Rockies.
Seattle also does strange reaches to me. Philip Grubauer was a strange reach at $8 million because he played for an Avalanche team when they won that, very much like Chicago when they won cups, led the league in not only offensive possession numbers, but also defensively fewest shots against, good defensive metrics. Grubauer really wasn't working that hard. Then you put him on a team that's an expansion team that's kind of trying to come together here. And while expansion teams aren't as bad as they used to be, it's still a tough ask. And for a guy who I think is a fair to middling goaltender at best. So they overspent on him. They're married to him. They gave him a big deal. I don't know if it's going to be the same with Montour, but a guy who's on the backside of 30 now, got his cup, got paid. And again, what is Seattle ready to win? So I just don't think there's going to be much excitement for the matchups. I think maybe a little bit geographically it'll be there, but I just don't know what the appeal is, because when Utah didn't get Montour, it's almost like everybody went, oh, thank you. Oh, I was worried we were going to get Montour and we are going to use up all our cap space. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of weird.
Right. No, you're right. There is that aspect. Plus, I feel like you can also add the aspect of the difference between the divisions in the Central Division. So Utah is getting better in the Central Division, and Seattle is still kind of low. It's still kind of floating in that right now, that lower half of the Pacific Division, which in itself right already is a weaker division. I'm not afraid to say that. Pacific Division is definitely the weaker division of the Western Conference. So are there going to be matchups where Seattle wins a couple of games? Sure, but I still really see Utah really taking most of those matchups. I don't really, like, to me, I just feel like the excitement. Yeah, you're right. The excitement just is not going to be there.
I just don't think it is. Plus, as you mentioned, them being in the Pacific, you're not going to see them that much. I don't think Seattle's it for me.
Yeah. Same aspect of being in the Pacific Division, the Anaheim Ducks. So same reason. We talked about, again, the reason why they should. Pretty decent reasons, but I think that's the only thing that's going for them.
The bad blood between the players that you cited in the last episode is important to a rivalry. These teams aren't going to meet in the playoffs anytime soon. No. Also, the Ducks are bad. Last year, John Gibson, who I think really deserves to be traded out of Anaheim, but now it might be too late. I would like to have seen him shipped out 2-3 years ago, because he's one of the best goaltenders that no one knows about. Really, I mean, when the Ducks were good, it was because he stood on his head. And the Ducks have some exciting young players, but there's not much more to him than that. And now Gibson, again, is a guy he's getting up there. He's getting along in the tooth. If he got in front of a good defensive team, maybe he'd catch a little bit of a spark, but there's not much to get excited about. Even the young guns on this Ducks team have kind of fallen off. I am not as excited about seeing the Ducks anymore as I was 2-3 years ago. Yeah,
2 or 3 years ago, like the rivalry between Arizona and Anaheim, I was like, ooh, this is going to be fun. But now I'm just like, yeah, sure, there's bad blood, but
how much of it is still alive this year, right?
Sure, yeah.
And again, talk about it needs to kind of be even to have a rivalry. I don't know that Anaheim's winning the bulk of its games against the Utah Hockey Club.
Plus, let's add what I mentioned previously too. We do not have, at least to my knowledge, because we still don't know, but and it probably won't be. So it's likely a very different TV crew, right? Tyson Nash isn't going to be is most likely not going to be on the TV crew for Utah, and he was probably one of the biggest reasons that kind of kept the bad blood, because Anaheim fans were hearing the whatever Tyson Nash had to say about Trevor Zegras or whoever else on Anaheim, and that kind of fueled them on that side of the rivalry, and then started butting heads with Anaheim with Arizona fans at the time. Since that's gone, I'm curious to see how quickly that fizzles out.
Yeah, I mean, I know Tyson from back when I was with the Preds. He's not shy. He's not shy at all to put his, and that's what the fans in the state of Arizona and those who follow the Coyotes loved about him, was that he was opinionated. He was not afraid to say things. He was not afraid to stir in the pot. But you're right. I expect it to be a different attitude, just a different vibe all the way around following the broadcasts and the way everything's kind of going to break out here. I think it's going to be just a different look and feel, and that's going to fizzle.
It certainly will fizzle. Anything else from Anaheim that you say you can? No. All right.
I think we've covered it.
We covered that one pretty much. But all right. So what
one of the nicest buildings in the NHL, though, by the way.
Yeah, we certainly.
Honda Center.
It is. Yeah, I've never been, but I've heard great things. What we're going to do is we still got two more teams to discuss. We will get to those and talk about why those teams won't be Utah's number one rival. We'll do that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices in the Game Time app usually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. So they have those last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Every single time, I'm going to tell you guys, always wanting to get Arizona Diamondbacks, San Francisco Giants games, joining all my fellow friends in Orange, take over Phoenix. Always a fun time. Every single time I get those tickets, I go to Game Time, because those last minute deals always get me the best price I can find. I can view my seat in the app so I can make sure I'm getting a good view of the field and getting a good experience. There's the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and of course my favorite feature, all-in pricing. We toggle this feature and it will show you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And again, you do have to toggle the feature on, but I do recommend you do it because it is very well worth it, so you can actually see what those final price is before you even hit checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So we still got two more teams to get to of the potential rivals for Utah and why they shouldn't be the number one rival for the Utah Hockey Club, Tom. And now let's get to the two that probably you made the biggest arguments for. Let's see what the arguments against for these teams are. So let's start on this one with the Vegas Golden Knights.
Vegas out of the division. That's a negative against them, so we're not going to see them that much. So I really feel like that hurts when you don't play a team that much. You're playing 3-4 times versus 6 or more, especially in the playoffs. The way the NHL playoffs are set up, folks, if you're new and you don't know, it's top 8 in the conference make the playoffs. However, for the most part, it's divisional play the first couple of rounds. Now, there is a chance for a swing team, and that's an episode Robyn and I will cover as we get closer to the season. So keep listening. We'll explain the playoff format. But just know that for the most part, you're playing your way out of your division.
Yeah.
And I think that a team in the division is much more of a potential rival than a team out of the division. The other thing, quite frankly, when Vegas came in and this team was still in Phoenix, there was a very big brother, little brother feeling. What happened was that a lot of the snowbirds who would come down to play golf and want to catch an NHL game before Vegas, they all came to Phoenix. They would
Mhm.
hang out in Scottsdale. They would hang out in Gilbert. They would go play TPC Scottsdale, or they would go play some other fancy course. They would enjoy themselves, and then they would go check out a Coyotes game or two. Well, when Vegas came in, they lost a lot of those people to the golf courses and the shows and the lights and the strip in Vegas. So I think there was a bit of an inferiority complex there with the Coyotes, and they were always trying to catch up. And Vegas's success in winning a Stanley Cup and all that kind of put that team a little bit more in the rearview mirror. Here's the point I'm trying to make. Vegas fans don't care about the Coyotes rivalry. It's up to Utah Hockey Club to make them care about the UHC. And heading into this year, I think any fervor and any, vitriol or whatever is going to be firmly one-sided until things really get going in this particular situation. And that, to me, is not a rivalry.
Yeah, again, it really does depend. Yeah, like I said, there has to be a true like initiation on one side of enough caring. Like both sides have to care incredibly amount, and like you said, I just don't see both sides putting all that effort into it. And again, there still is that territory, but really, I think I said there's going to be a territorial line where at some point that like it's not like when you get closer to it, sure, but those in Salt Lake, they're like. They might kind of shrug and be like, "Yeah, it's Vegas. They're there. I mean, we don't like them, but they're there. They're not like they might consider them a quote rival, but maybe not the number one rival."
I think if I'm a Utah fan, I'm much more predisposed to hating Vegas than Vegas fans are predisposed to hating me. So,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And even so, again, not seeing them all that much. Yes, geographically, the rivalry sets up. That checks out. And again, as you mentioned, the border between the two states, that kind of area there.
Yeah.
Of course, Vegas pushed in. There's gonna be VGK jerseys in the stands in Utah at those games, but I don't know. I just don't know that it's enough to convince me to rank them number one.
The only flip side I'll say to that, and again, this is something I probably should have mentioned on last episode, but I'll mention it now really quickly, Tom, was during the draft when Ryan Smith stepped up to the podium to get ready to announce the Utah's first pick, they were eventually picked Tisha Ginla. When he first stepped at the podium, everyone at Sphere was like, well, there's a decent people at Sphere who were booing. Yes. My assumption was those were Vegas fans because whatever, but that's only assumption. I can't assume that they're all Vegas fans.Maybe they were Sharks fans because a lot of Sharks, or maybe they were Coyotes fans, or maybe they were Avalanche fans, whatever it might be. Like I don't know because we can't see from this side, but
it's easy to hate a team you have no actual tangible anything for you.
I mean, it was funny though, where Ryan Smith's like, "Hey, you can't boo us. We haven't done anything yet."
Right, and he's right. we just showed up.
But other than that, though, I really don't think that like the mutual hate won't be there at first. So it'll take a little bit to gather. Maybe once they play each other more often, if they even play each other in the playoffs and down the road, who knows? But to start off with, again, rivalry will be there, certainly, but not enough to be number one.
So that leaves us with one
Colorado.
team.
Colorado Avalanche.
Why not Colorado?
Why not Colorado? Honestly, Tom, there are very few reasons in my opinion. I want to kind of hear. I want to hear a little bit from you first, and kind of want to see what you think.
I think, again, going back to, I think it needs to be two-sided. It's going to be Colorado, unless things kind of really break in an unexpected direction, dominating this rivalry at first. It's easy to hate a team that beats you all the time, but again, it needs to be on both sides. So if Colorado fans think it's a yawn fest when they're coming in to play Utah in the beginning, well, there's not a whole heck of a lot there. Now I do expect Utah to be
then that mutual bit won't be there because Colorado is as you mentioned it to start off with. on the other episode is that Colorado is one of the top 3 teams in the Central Division. They are a team to beat. Utah is kind of still towards the bottom half, but the upper part of that bottom half. So they still got a ways to go to even be a fully competitive team. Will they have a couple competitive games against Colorado? Sure, of course they will. But will it be enough to really instill much hate for many Colorado fans? These are the Colorado fans who didn't really pay attention to much of the history of the Avalanche. They're just like, oh, they're this team now that they're called the Yeti whenever that eventually comes, because again we know it will. Will they know that was a bit of the identity that the Avalanche used to have? I don't know if they'll care. There'll be a chunk that probably won't really care.
Here's another thought too, is that there are teams in the Western Conference that people will buy tickets to see their stars. Edmonton, maybe Celebrini with the Sharks could be one. Chicago, you might buy a ticket to go see Connor Bedard. Nashville, just load it up, and you're probably going to want to go see what Stamkos is going to do with those guys in Philip Forsberg and UC Saros. And Colorado, you buy a ticket to see the superstars on that team in Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon. I think that until your fans are buying tickets because they hate the other team, not because of the superstars on the other team, that is a prohibitive factor to having a rivalry.
Oh, certainly. And I feel like that's going to be, that's certainly another factor to add on there. I mean, like, and again, yeah, kind of, again, that, I mean, that's another added factor that mutual agreement, like that mutual hate, because like, otherwise it's just like, it's like the only other reason is, oh, they're regional. It's like, yeah, they're a brother next door, but really is like that's all. I mean, you can take it. You can do a nice little trip to the state to the next state over, but what else besides that?
When I was a kid growing up, and I grew up in Buffalo, New York, I was a Sabres fan. Mm-hmm. I hated every other team that was around us, but not to the same degree. I hated the Bruins, but we were in the Adams division together. I hated the Quebec Nordiques. I hated the Montreal Canadiens and the Hartford Whalers. They were in our division. Yep. But geographical closeness, did I hate Toronto? Sure. Hour and a half away from Buffalo. We never played them. We never saw the Leafs. Philly, Pittsburgh, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, all very close to Buffalo. But did I hate them to the degree I hated Boston and Quebec? No, because I didn't see them 8 times a year. And so it makes a difference. And I think that's why when you look at that, when comparing Vegas to Colorado, I think it gives Colorado the edge in the team that you could really lock in on the earliest.
Yeah, because again, adding that division aspect kind of does definitely give them the edge on that one. Again, look, I can even tell you, as a San Jose Sharks fan, born and raised, I always, I had a incredible hate for the Los Angeles Kings. The Anaheim Ducks were also there. I didn't like them, but didn't really care for them all that much because of a different talent disparity. I eventually grew to hate them too, but growing up, I was like, I just don't like the Kings a lot more. And then Vegas comes into town, and I'm like, oh, there we go. There's the rival. And again, it takes time. Again, I think because that one was built through the playoffs. They weren't supposed to be rivals, but that was built through the playoffs.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing too is maybe I feel like, and here's the thing, maybe in 2 years down the road, Tom, Utah might just squeak into a rivalry in a wild card spot. Maybe Colorado at that point is still in the top of the Central Division. They probably still expect them to be for at least a decent amount of time. Could very well be that they take the top spot and then go up against a wild card team who, go figure, it's Utah. So I think that's the only thing that can happen. But again, that's still 2 years down the road, 2-3 years down the road.
And
again, you're still banking on the fact that is Colorado going to still even be that good enough by that point?
And they should be, But of course, things happen. But yes, playoffs cement rivalries. And why did Buffalo not have a rivalry with Philly until they met in the playoffs? Why did Detroit and Dallas and Colorado, those three teams are inextricably linked in the 90s, and Nashville and Anaheim in the 2000s? The rivalries that build, it's not just as simple as Calgary against Edmonton. The rivalries that are build because you see each other year in, year out in the playoffs. Washington, Pittsburgh, Ovi versus Crosby, huge rivalry for years. Why? Because one was trying to get past the other. The Penguins were off and winning, and then it was massive when Washington beat them and then went on to win the Stanley Cup. So I think it absolutely takes a dynamite playoff series to launch that type of intensity.
Yeah, and we'll see exactly who that first true rival is once the playoffs hit. But and I think that's kind of why it's hard. As we said, we had so many good reasons why teams deserve to be a number one rival, but at the same time, the teams that have maybe some of the best arguments for, also have a decent amount of arguments against, because of those unknown factors going into the season, because we don't know where it's going to be, how intense the games are going to be, and really and again, the other factors that you mentioned, are the fans even going to buy in to that kind of rivalry?
We are literally one line brawl away from the biggest rivalry for Utah Hockey Club being Minnesota.
True. Yeah, it very well could be.
It could be that easy.
That's all it could take. Sometimes that's all it needs to be.
If that happens, I'm on board. Let's do it.
Oh, certainly. Like I would jump on it too. I love line brawl rivalries. Those are.
Don't see those too much anymore, but every once in a while.
I feel like unless you're a team of whoever is being coached by John Tortorella, and then
even he's mellowing in his old age. I mean, he's still got all the spit and vinegar, but he's mellowing a little bit, just a little bit. Don't tell Torts I said that though.
Just a little bit. Yeah, he's listening to this podcast as you speak.
Right. He's calling me right now. I have to go.
Any final thoughts before we close things off?
You know what? I want to hear from the fans. I want to hear from everybody listening. What do you think? Give me some of your out of left field picks too. I would love to hear reasons that you think it's going to be St. Louis or Dallas. I enjoy listening in on all of those thoughts, and we certainly appreciate everybody being on board with the show, so thank you. Mm-hmm. And I just want to remind everybody to like and follow and subscribe what we're doing here. We're building something big. I mean, this is a big thing for Utah, getting an NHL team, and ride the wave with us. It's going to be an awful lot of fun, especially once the season hits. We're going to have a lot of detailed analysis, a lot of breakdowns. We're really going to get into the nitty gritty of this, so glad you're here now. Yeah,
whether you're a new hockey fan or you've been a hockey fan forever but are just buying into what Utah has to offer, this is the place to listen to for all your Utah Hockey Club analysis. Once that season kicks back in, we're going to be back to 5 days a week, Tom. We're going to be back right into constant daily talk, and so many of you guys are going to ask for so many different content, exclusive content coming your way if you're a member of our Insider Text Club. If you're not part of the Insider Text Club, don't forget to join. You can join today. All you got to do is text to 801-760-9033. That is 801-760-9033 to get started, and then we'll send you a link to sign up. Your first 14 days are always going to be free, so you can always test it out, see if you like it. We hope you guys do. Stick around with us, and then again, get access to exclusive content, text us one-on-one. Be a part of this community that we are building together for Utah Hockey Club in year one. But that's going to be it, Tom, for this episode. Again, hope you guys like what you heard. Don't forget to interact with us on social media, though. We are on X, Instagram, and Threads at LO_NHL Utah. You can also follow us. We're now on TikTok at LO_Utah Hockey. We post a lot of little short content, little clips from our episodes, in case you missed it. So if you want to hear some of the highlights coming your way, we got a lot of those coming on our TikTok as well as Instagram Reels, everywhere, really. So just don't forget to interact with us. Ask any question. We'll answer right back or in a future episode of the podcast. But thanks again, everyone, for listening to today, and we'll see you guys next time.